Hello, my beautiful people, and I'm well aware that everybody has already seen and talked about this movie, but screw it. Today we're going to talk about Scream 5, or the new Scream 2022. You might think that it's a little stupid that they just called it Scream, but there's a reason for it in the movie. I actually decided to binge the previous four Scream movies in preparation for this new movie, and it took a while because I got busy during the time frames and all that crap. But what's most important is that I managed to watch all four of them in time to still see Scream 5 in theaters. And first of all, I love the Scream franchise. It's one of my favorite horror franchises because it's so clever. It's so great with its mystery aspect throughout all the films. Some of them, the killer's pretty obvious, but part of the fun is seeing how the characters uh, sort of put the pieces together. And I love how the movies always poke fun at the genre, poke fun at the horror genre, address the cliches in pretty much every single movie, and do them anyway because we're here to have fun here. And if I were to rank the first four movies, the bottom would be Scream 3. That movie sucks. Then we get Scream 2. It was okay. Scream 4, which I really enjoyed. And then obviously the original Scream, it's at the very top of the list. And so, yeah. Now we have this new Scream movie, which is the first film in the franchise to not be directed by Wes Craven because he sadly passed away in 2015. This movie was even dedicated to him, even though he died years ago before this movie was in production. And it says for Wes at the very, very end of the film. For all I know, this movie could have been in development hell since like 2014 or whatever, and he was originally going to direct it, but then he died or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they're just paying tribute because he directed everything else in the franchise. Anyway, every single Scream movie has commented on a different aspect or thing in the horror genre. More specifically, slasher movies. The first movie is on the genre of a whole. The second movie is about sequels. The third movie is about the end of a trilogy. And the fourth movie is about reboots or revivals. And so this new movie is about a recent craze that's been going on in horror movies lately, or just in Hollywood in general, the requel. For those of you who are unaware, a requel is when a big movie franchise pretty much decides to start all over for the most part. Typically, requels are sequels to the original films in the franchise and ignoring every other movie that came out in between. Examples in recent years in the horror genre specifically are 2018's Halloween, 2021's Candyman, and the upcoming 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These movies would often feature old cast members from the original movie come back to play those characters again with a whole bunch of new characters to carry on the torch. Here's the thing about most of these requels in recent years. It's not the first time that these franchises have done that. Like, here's the thing with Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre specifically. These franchises both have four separate timelines each. I mean, with Halloween, technically there's five timelines, but Halloween 3 doesn't really have anything to do with any of the other movies, so it doesn't really count with those. But with Halloween, the timelines consist of 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 in one timeline. And then the next timeline consists of Halloween 1, Halloween H2O, and Halloween Resurrection. The third timeline is the Rob Zombie movies with his remakes of Halloween and Halloween 2. And the fourth timeline is the new movies with Halloween, uh, Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and the upcoming Halloween Ends. And I forgot to mention that with Halloween, there's in the second timeline, the Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2 also counts. I forgot to mention that. And with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm not as familiar with Texas Chainsaw, so stay with me. So the first 4 Texas Chainsaw movies take place in one timeline. Then the franchise got rebooted with the remake. Then the remake got a sequel. So that's 2 different timelines. Now the third timeline is the original movie and a sequel to the original movie called Texas Chainsaw 3D, and a prequel to both of them called Leatherface. And now this new timeline, the fourth timeline, is the original movie and the upcoming Texas Chainsaw Massacre that will release on Netflix in only a week or 2. Holy crap. Something like Candyman, it's a whole lot more simple where it just ignores the 2 and 3rd film and only cares about the original movie. I haven't seen 2021's Candyman or any of the Candymans, so don't tell me anything. So anyway, back to Scream. Dear God, that was such a tangent. This movie does just that with what typical requels do. We're introduced to a whole bunch of new characters, and the legacy characters from the original movie are here to pass on the torch. But what actually makes this movie a little different than the typical requels is that this film actually includes a couple characters from other movies in the franchise. Randy's sister, who I believe was in the 3rd movie, I think. I don't know, that might be a different person. Actually shows up in this film. And the deputy, who is now the sheriff in this film, from Scream 4. She actually shows up in this movie. From this point on, I am going to be talking about spoilers, so if you have not seen the movie, please, please, please stop watching now. You've probably already seen it, but just in case, don't watch the rest of this video. Still leave a like, still comment below, and still subscribe and ring the bell, but just don't continue watching this video if you haven't seen the film. Okay, we cool? We cool. Now let's talk spoilers for Scream 2022. For a first for this franchise, we actually have an opening kill that isn't an opening kill. The person who we believe is supposed to die in that opening scene actually survives for the entirety of the film. She does not die. And so we're introduced to our main character, which is her sister, and also her boyfriend, who is played by Huey from The Boys. And as soon as I saw this dude, I was like, he did it. He's the killer. He's responsible for all the requel shenanigans. He's the killer. And the funny thing is, when we first see Dewey in this film, he immediately calls it out like I did, like, never trust the love interest. And there was another character who I also suspected could be the killer. Her name is Amber, and my friend who I watched this movie with, I looked at them, and when the 2 of them were revealed to be the killers, I looked at them and was like, I freaking told you, dude! I was right on the freaking nose, man. Right on the money. Right on the freaking cash. In a franchise that is already pretty freaking meta, this is probably the most meta out of all of the Scream movies. Not only do they directly reference the whole requel shtick and toxic fandoms, but they go back to the original house from the first movie, and the legacy characters are like, seriously, dude, the same house? You're not original. This is out of ideas, or whatever Sydney said. But there's a scene where our horror movie expert for the film Mindy is sitting down and she's watching the in-universe stab, which again in-universe is based off of the real life event of the first movie. And she is watching the scene where Randy from the first movie is watching Halloween and Michael Myers is right behind Jamie Lee Curtis and Randy is saying, "Turn around, Jamie, turn around." And Ghostface is right behind him. It's double meta because, well, he's watching a horror movie where the killer is obviously right behind our main character, and meanwhile, the killer is right behind him, and he is screaming, "Jamie, turn around." And the actor's real name in the original movie was Jamie Kennedy. But now, in this new movie, our character is watching Randy watch Jamie Lee Curtis being haunted by a killer. Meanwhile, Randy, the killer's behind him, and now the killer is behind her in real life, and she is telling Randy, "Turn around. You're the expert. Just turn around." And she turns around. It is so meta and so crazy, and I freaking love these movies. One of the things that I always found so annoying watching each passing Scream sequel is that they just refuse to kill off its legacy characters. Where other horror franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Friday the 13th, they will kill off characters from previous movies if they want to. For instance, in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Nancy from the first movie gets killed by Freddy. Friday the 13th Part 2, the final girl from the first movie gets killed before the title even shows up. In the Halloween movies, Laurie Strode has died like 2 or 3 times because the whole multiple timelines crap. She died off screen in Halloween 4, and then she had an on screen death in Halloween Resurrection. Ironic, the movie was called Resurrection, where it was Halloween H2O, where Laurie was brought back to death, and in Resurrection, she dies. Each single film that comes afterwards, you keep expecting them to kill off one of the legacy characters. They came close to that. In Scream 2, they killed off Randy, which was a mistake because he's the best freaking character. But then, in that movie, they had the same Dewey fake-out death from the first movie. And then Scream 3 and Scream 4 came out, and Sidney, Gale, and Dewey were all still alive. I mean, it's not that I'm mad at that or anything, but it gets kind of tiring after 4 movies. You just assume that, like, they're never gonna kill off these characters. They just don't have the guts or they just don't want to. But then here comes Scream 2022. Not only does it have a character from Scream 4 come back and they kill her off, but one of the big 3 legacy characters, Dewey, gets killed by Ghostface. And that was a pretty heartbreaking moment because I like Dewey. Dewey's a fun character, and to see him die was pretty sad. Because we gotten to know Dewey over the last 4 movies in the franchise, and it was sad to see him go. Now, I will admit, when Dewey initially got stabbed, I thought, oh my god, this is just going to be another Dewey fake-out death like they did in the first and second film. But no, Dewey stayed on the ground. There was blood everywhere, and paramedics were bringing his body out. Dewey's freaking dead. However, I do think that it's also kind of lame that the Stab franchise just got like 1 or maybe even 2 new installments in the last movie, because it's been a literal decade since Scream 4. And with Scream 4, it's also been a decade since the previous movie. And they were kind of clever because apparently in that time span, Stab had multiple more installments because, studios want to pump out the sequels very quickly. So in Scream 3, they were on Stab 3, and by Scream 4, they're on Stab 7. So 10 years later, with Scream 2022, they're on Stabs, which is Stab 8 in this universe. Apparently, this Stab is less like Scream and more like Get Out. There was a lot of social commentary and crap like that. And in universe, the general consensus is that it's not a bad idea, it's just not a Stab movie. But one thing I think was kind of cool about the Stab movies, or the Stab movies in this movie, is that we actually get a cameo from James and Chelsea from Dead Meat, which was really cool to see on the big screen. Congratulations to them for being in a Scream movie. That must feel really awesome for them. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I kind of would have expected Stab to be on movie number 10 by now. But overall, Scream 2022 is a really great movie. I'm a little concerned at first, but this movie justifies the crap out of its existence, and yeah, we definitely need the Scream franchise right now in this day and age of horror movies. So, in my ranking of the Scream franchise, this is gonna go right in between the original Scream and Scream 4. This is a really freaking good movie, and if you're a fan of horror movies, if you're a fan of the Scream franchise, or maybe just a newcomer or whatever, give this movie a watch. It's so much fun, so great. It's just fantastic. Probably my favorite live-action movie of the year, but it's the only live-action movie that I saw that come out this year so far, so it's also my least favorite when you really think about it. But anyway, guys, that's all I have to say for this video. What did you guys think of Scream 2022, or Scream 5, whatever you like to call it? I personally like to call it Scream 5, just to keep things simplistic. And what are you guys excited for Scream 6, which will begin shooting later this year? So we could get another Scream movie by next year or by 2024. That's freaking exciting. I'm excited for Scream 6. What about you guys? Please let me know down in the comments below. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified of when future videos are uploaded. I have a bunch of different videos planned. And hopefully that ranking video, and maybe I'll talk about the Book of Boba Fett. But anyway, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.